Welcome back to the Blitz Bird Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Denuza.
And I'm your host, Jack McCarthy, and let's get right into the action. In today's episode, we are going to be reacting to the AFC and NFC championship games, and then we're going to talk about some of the new coach hires for the Bears, the Jags, and the Raiders.
Alrighty, first things first, in our first game in the championship weekend, we have the Eagles versus Commanders. The Eagles take home the win 55-23 in what was a pretty much just a blowout. Jack, what are your thoughts on this huge win for the Eagles to get them into Super Bowl 59?
I kind of expected the Eagles to win. I didn't expect this big of a blowout. I mean, that was a blowout. That game was not competitive at all. Commanders showed great fight. Kudos to them this year making the championship game. But Saquon Barkley, man, to me, he is the most valuable player right now, and possibly in sports in general.
Yeah, definitely in the NFL. I mean, that dude's he's unstoppable. Yeah, really.
First play, 60 yards right off the bat. I mean, that's crazy. That's not, you don't see that. That you can't coach that.
The only other player in the league that is capable of that is Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And, he's not in the playoffs anymore. Saquon is. Saquon, in my opinion, has had one of, if not the best season as a running back. I mean, he's completely transformed that Eagles offense in all sort of ways. I mean, I agree. I mean, he probably is the most valuable player in the National Football League.
Yeah. I thought Jalen Hurts also played a really good game. I know him and Saquon combined for 6 total rushing touchdowns, and then Jalen had 1 through the air.
Will Shipley had a rushing touchdown.
That must have been the last one. To be honest, I turned it off after Will Shipley had that 60-yard run. I was like, there's just no point. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, definitely a really entertaining game to watch because the Commanders put up a really good fight for pretty much 3.5 quarters of the game. I thought they were definitely outmanned, and to be honest, I don't think that they were ready to be put in that position in the spotlight, the biggest stage, second biggest stage in football. But just a remarkable season for them. First-year head coach Dan Quinn really just making a culture change in Washington, and that's super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Dan Quinn's come in, completely flipped things around. He kind of did the same thing when he came in as the Falcons head coach. We were a really bad team. He flipped things around, and I think it was maybe third year, maybe second year, got us to the Super Bowl. So he definitely is capable of getting a team in the right direction that hasn't been there. But what he's also been, he's shown he's not capable of winning the big games. Which, granted, this Commanders team, in my opinion, had no business even being in the situation they were in. They should have been a first, maybe definitely a second round exit, and they made it all the way to the championship. And I mean, what an incredible season out of them. Jaden Daniels, we've said it so many times, can't say it enough. He's just a bona fide superstar. I mean, that dude is incredible. He is the definition of what you want to build a franchise around. Other than Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, he might even be number one because of how young he is, and he's on his rookie deal. He's not getting paid a lot. He's what you want as a quarterback. So that sky's the limit for that Commanders team. I hope their coaching doesn't hinder them like the Falcons were hindered by Dan Quinn there in the end. But I mean, an incredible game and season out of them. Their defense did allow 55 points, which is a NFC record in the championship. That's just not something you ever see. So crazy that the Eagles were able to come out and do that.
They have a tendency to do that in these NFC championship games. Do you remember they beat the Vikings by 31?
They killed them, yeah.
They had another game where they beat the crap out of whoever they play. It was the Niners. They beat them by 20 or 30 points. So whenever the Eagles get to these big games, they show up. This is a team that shows up consistently. Really looking forward to the rematch with Kansas City. I'm hoping and praying that the Eagles don't choke away late in the fourth quarter.
Oh, my God. That seems to be the story in every Chiefs playoff game of significance. It's the same thing. We'll touch on the Chiefs here in a second, but the thing the Eagles have that I don't think the Bills necessarily had, the Bills have a good defense. I think the Eagles have probably the best, if not one of the best defenses in the league. I mean, you got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis in the middle, just absolute, run stuffers, and Jalen Carter can get after the quarterback. You got some studs on the end with Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith. Back when Dean was healthy, you had him at linebacker. His backup has been playing quite well. He had a really good game. And then you got Bond, who's the other linebacker, who's just a stud. And the biggest part of that defense is their secondary. Yeah. I mean, you got Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. Those are three, Pro Bowl level talents back there. So there really is not much of a weak point on that Eagles defense. So with that, the sky's the limit, which they're at the sky right now in the Super Bowl. Can they capitalize, use that defense to shut down the Chiefs, which is a lot easier said than done. So I'm definitely really, really excited to see the Eagles in the Super Bowl. I feel like, AFC, NFC matchup, how it has to be, I feel like these are probably the two best teams. You could argue Chiefs-Bills might have been the two best, but that's not how the Super Bowl plays out. So I can't wait for the game. Eagles they're on fire right now. I hope that they can keep that same flame going into next week.
Yeah.
That's going to go ahead and bring us to our next game, which was the Bills-Chiefs, and what was probably, what's new with this? One of the best games we've ever seen. Comes down to the wire, back and forth kind of deal. The Chiefs end up winning 32-29, and just an incredible game. What are your thoughts on the Bills in this game?
Yeah, personally, I think they got outplayed, they got outcoached, they got out physical in every aspect of the game. Josh Allen didn't play like his normal self. In the first quarter, he was playing kind of skittish, almost like he was nervous, like the light was too big. And for him, that's like, you can't do that. You have to go in there with a chip on your shoulder. You have to go in there and just utterly dominate from the get-go, especially when you're playing Mahomes. You're never going to win against Mahomes if you come out, playing scared. If you're Josh Allen, I don't know if we'll ever beat Mahomes.
At this rate, I don't see it happening.
He's 0-4 in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's is he 0-5? I think he's 0-5 now.
0-4 against strictly Mahomes in the playoffs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's I don't know what to say. I'm gonna disagree with that take you said about him. In the first quarter, yes, he did look a little skittish, wasn't playing like himself, but he did everything he needed to do to put that team in a winning position. Even there till the very last play they had on offense, when he throws the ball up to it was Dalton Kincaid, I believe, and it was a drop. It was a tough catch, but in a position like that, in a game like this, you have to catch the ball. But yeah, with Dalton Kincaid, that's a ball that he has to catch that ball. Like, yeah, I understand it's a tough catch, in a situation like that in a game, catch the ball. Yeah, Josh Allen gave him every opportunity to catch it. He gave his team every opportunity to win this game, and they just couldn't get it done. The defense could not get the stops on, third downs, like there at the very end of the game. The biggest part of it that you hit on is they got outcoached. Andy Reid is the best coach in the NFL. Sean McDermott cannot win the big games. He's don't get me wrong, he's completely turned the culture around in Buffalo, but they're right here. They need to get up here, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that with McDermott.
Mahomes and especially Andy Reid, they're just on a whole nother planet of football right now. And it's been this way for, over half a decade now. Mahomes has made it to 6 consecutive AFC Championship games. And
it's ridiculous. It's all it's been is the
Chiefs. He's lost one of them, which is, you can't coach talent like that. And credit to Andy Reid. To be honest, he's very close to surpass Belichick, in my opinion. Because
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Because without Mahomes in Philadelphia, he was still a really good coach. And then you look at Belichick without Brady. Yeah, he took Mac Jones to the playoffs, but they got killed.
It was a different story.
And Belichick, after 2 years, 3 years past Brady, not even in the NFL anymore. He's gone to college to coach UNC, which is just crazy. I thought for sure he was going to get a job, especially with all the head coach firings this year. I'm really surprised, especially you see Pete Carroll got a job like that.
That's insane. There's no reason Pete Carroll has a job in the NFL and Belichick doesn't. We'll touch on those hires here in a second after we finish this segment. But pretty much just to wrap it up, we got a Super Bowl rematch from, I believe it was 57. I think it's when
it was 2
the
years
rematch
ago.
was. Which, that was a very good Super Bowl. Came down to the end kind of deal.
One point game.
Yeah, it was close. So, maybe we'll get that game again. I'm so tired of seeing the Chiefs. At some point, the dynasty will end. But I don't see it happening for the next at least 5 years. Which, somebody's got to beat them. And The Bills can't.
I don't know if anybody can beat them at this point.
I don't either.
Because with the way the Chiefs played this year, everybody was like, oh, this isn't the same team. This isn't a Super Bowl caliber team. And then they come to the playoffs and they just light it up. Nobody can even really compete with them.
They lit it up all season.
In late games, nobody is better than Reed and Mahomes.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, crazy good game there with the Bills, Chiefs. Decent game, kind of decent with the Eagles and Commanders. But I think we got the two best teams. I'm excited for it. So, we'll dive in deep on the Super Bowl in next week's show. Yeah, great games. We'll go ahead and move on, talk about some coaching hires. First one up, we'll go ahead and talk about the biggest one, the most sought-after coach, Ben Johnson, leaving the offensive coordinator position for the Lions to go to the division rival Bears. Got paid just a crazy amount of money to go there. Got to bring in his entire coaching staff that he wanted. What's your thoughts on that move by the Bears to go out and acquire the biggest coaching name, kind of in the coaching portal type deal?
Yeah, this was kind of an uncharacteristic hire from them. I didn't expect them to go out and get kind of the front runner, top dog, free agent head coach option, which they went out and did. They got a really good offensive minded coach. They have a really solid offense with Caleb Williams, and it didn't look that way last year. I mean, the coaching was pitiful. He had an interim head coach for almost half the season, and before that he had Eberflus. I can almost give him, just scratch off that rookie year because he was set up to fail. That's not,
and he still had a decent year all in all. Like, it wasn't a disaster by any means.
He's going to be. I think he's going to be a really special player. I mean, it's hard to compare him to Jane Daniels after this year. I don't know if he'll ever get to that level, but he can definitely be a superstar for sure. I think this is a culture change for Chicago. They have been just really bad hires consistently. Their ownership is kind of a joke, and for them to go out and get Ben Johnson, that's a huge step forward for the Chicago Bears franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Their owners, credit to their owners. They've been really bad in the past 30 years or maybe more, but they went all in. I guess they heard the noise coming from all the fans and all the players, just everybody. Like, hey, we're tired of this. Go out. Y'all got the money. It's Chicago's one of the best sports cities in the USA. Yeah. Like, it's up there. So, I mean, it should be a prime destination. It should be like a Philadelphia. It should be like a Dallas, stuff like that. So, I think it was a home run hire. I could see him being spectacular, kind of being like a Sean McVay, an offensive guru and really take a team to the next level. But the one that kind of, I guess you could say, surprised me and probably both of us the most that we'll move on to next here is the Raiders hiring Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll coming out of retirement to go down to Las Vegas. Not a far trip from Seattle. What do you think about this one? Do you think he's too old? Do you think he's going to work out? I mean, what do you think about this one?
I think this is a complete and utter desperation move from the Raiders. I mean, he's almost, if not in his 80s already, which to me that's a huge red flag for a head coach because you don't know, like, say he gets sick midway through the year. He could possibly be hospitalized for just a common sickness due to his age. If you're taking a big risk hiring somebody that's this old, and granted, he is a really good coach. I mean, that
he's also, I'll give you this. First thing, he's 73, so he's not quite, in his 80s or anything. But he's also in spectacular shape. Like, if you look at the dude, you'd be like, okay, he's probably late 50s or early 60s. You wouldn't think he's 73 years old. So he keeps himself in good shape. So I don't think you have to worry as much about, him getting hospitalized or being old or anything. I think it's just more of like is he aged out of football? Because you look at all these other coaches outside of like Andy Reid. You look at Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur. All these young superstar head coaches, there's not a ton of old guys left. Belichick's gone. All these other older coaches, Bruce Arians, all those guys, they're gone. So, I mean, the way of football right now, Ben Johnson, is the young guys. But Pete Carroll coming in, I agree. I mean, it's a desperation hire. I honestly think if you're going to make a hire like this, that's pretty much just based off a name, why not go out and get Deion Sanders?
Yeah.
Like, no means do I think he should be an NFL head coach. But I also don't think Pete Carroll has it anymore. And I think, he was on a Seahawks team that made the playoffs. Like, they were pretty good. They
won the Super Bowl.
He's going to, yeah, but I'm talking about, like, right before he left. The Seahawks were not a terrible team. But you go to, arguably the worst team in football with no quarterback, no offensive pieces outside of Brock Bowers, no defensive pieces outside of Max Crosby, who's aging out. It's just a confusing hire.
This will be his 50th year coaching. I mean, he's older,
and he's had a heck of a career. He's a top tier coach.
He's a legit coach. But when you go to the Raiders, you're set up to fail. The Raiders probably won't be good for the next 10 years if I had to bet money on it. They have just terrible and horrendous players. Their ownership's a joke. Obviously, hiring Pete Carroll was, like we said, desperation move. Just not a good move. You could go out and get Mike McCarthy. And you choose Pete Carroll.
You could.
So
off that Mike McCarthy, we'll go ahead and move over to our next one. I don't have a lot to say about this one other than it was almost just as shocking, if not more shocking than Pete Carroll. The Cowboys fire Mike McCarthy, who was a pretty good head coach, I thought. I think he'll probably get a job somewhere. And hire their offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer, to be their head coach. Basically what Jerry Jones did is he was walking through the building. He was like, well, crap. All the big names that I wanted to be our head coach are gone. Brian, you're up. This hire makes no sense. Brian is not a special coach by any means. You don't think of, hey, what's a crazy good offense? The Cowboys are not one of the at least top 10 that come to mind. No. They have a few good players, but mostly it's their defense you think
right.
of.
Yeah, well, and Mike McCarthy, he's a quarterback guru.
Yeah,
he knows how to coach an offense very well. He calls some plays. He's a great offensive-minded coach, which I think to me it doesn't make any sense hiring the offensive coordinator whenever you already have Mike McCarthy. But I can understand letting McCarthy walk, or whether they fired him or he walked. I'm not really too sure. I think it had something to do with he kind of priced himself out with the intent that they were going to move on from him. Which, to me, that's a smart choice. If I was Mike McCarthy, I would 100% get out of Dallas, especially with that ownership. Jerry has completely gone senile. He's lost it. All he cares about is money and the media. That's the only thing he's concerned about with that franchise. They're the only team in the NFC that hasn't made a NFC championship game in, I want to say, 30 years. It's just embarrassing. The Cowboys they're America's team. Everybody says they're America's team. And they go on hire, Schottenheimer. It just doesn't make any sense. He has no head coaching experience. He's been the OC for a year, 2 years. He's been a career assistant. To me, it doesn't make any sense. But whether it works out, I don't think it will work out very well. I think he probably has got 2-3 years max in him. But that's just my opinion.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's a one and done, truth be told.
Well, especially with the way Jerry is. That could be he's a very possible outcome.
He's a moron. We'll go ahead and move on to our next one. I believe this is going to be the last one because the Jets and Saints are still searching for their head coach, right?
Jets went out and got Aaron
Jets got the Lions. Yeah, we'll talk about him next briefly. But we'll go ahead and hit on the Jags head coaching hire, which had just a ton of drama around it for a guy that most people haven't even heard of. The Jags go out and acquire Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Cohen in a move that was just crazy. Liam Cohen goes on a visit to Jacksonville, is basically like, hey, I don't like this GM that I'm going to have to work with. If you fire him, I'll take the job. And they're like, no, we're not going to fire him. So he's like, okay, I don't want the job. Goes back to Tampa. Tampa makes him the highest paid, I believe it was coordinator in the league. Yeah. Gives him a contract. And then the Jags owner calls him, flies him out on the private jet. It's like, hey, we'll fire him. We'll give you Ben Johnson type money, and we'll give you free range to do whatever you want. You'll have the say in the draft. You'll have the say in your coaches that you want to bring in. Basically, gives him anything he wants. For a guy like Liam Cohen, the Bucs offense is good, and he has gotten a lot out of not great players. They have Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield and Bucky Irvin and Tristan Wirfs, but those are all really good players. None of them are just insane. I guess you could say Mike Evans, but, and then Tristan Wirfs is ridiculous, but he's a lineman. So, it was just kind of an interesting hire to me. The only reason it's getting any kind of buzz is because of the drama. Basically, he told the Bucs, hey, I'm not leaving, don't worry about it. And, basically lied and said that he had a family emergency, and that family emergency was him taking a private jet to Jacksonville and signing a contract to become one of the highest paid coaches in the league. Which is just ridiculous. So, do you have anything to unpack on this one?
Yeah, to me it was just shocking. I I didn't think that they would fire their GM over this, but I think this is honestly a good thing for the Jaguars because I think they would have been able to acquire a lot better of a head coach if Baalke was already fired previously to their offseason. I know Ben Johnson didn't want to go there because of that. Aaron Glenn, I don't think they really pursued him, but if I had to guess, he didn't want to go to Jacksonville. Mike McCarthy.
Nobody wants to go to Jacksonville. They're a joke of a franchise.
Jacksonville right now is a dumpster fire. Trevor Lawrence will be coming back next year, but how good is Trevor Lawrence? I don't
think he's very good.
He was,
I guess we'll see.
He was a generational talent coming in. Had a okay rookie year, played really good a second year, got a really, really big overpaid contract, and now they're in, debt, and it's going to plague them for many years to come. I don't think Liam Cohen is a caliber head coach you want to be hiring, especially if you're in the AFC. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Personally, I didn't even know who Liam Cohen was until the news broke that the Jags fired Baalke just so he could become the head coach. And to me, that's just a desperation move. You fire
absolutely.
your GM so you can get a offensive coordinator on an offense that, like you said, they have some really decent talent. They have one or two elite offensive players, but who knows what he's going to bring as a head coach. I mean, an offensive coordinator compared to a head coach, there's so much more.
It's a huge difference.
You have to deal with all phases of the ball, special teams, defense, offense. So to me, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He has really not a whole lot of experience. He's a younger guy. So yeah, I mean, like we said, just sheer desperation from a very, very desperate franchise.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go ahead and hit on these last two hires very, very quickly, trying to keep this a little bit shorter. Patriots go out and get Mike Vrabel. This is absolutely my favorite hire of the entire coaching cycle. Ben Johnson was definitely probably the biggest name, I guess you could say, that everybody wanted, but it's hard to argue against Vrabes. I mean, the dude was very successful in Tennessee with not a great team. He milked everything out of Ryan Tannehill. And he played for the Patriots. Everybody in New England loves him. I definitely see this being kind of a Dan Campbell type hire. I think he could really blossom there in New England, especially with a stud quarterback like Drake May. Now, next year they're not going to be very good, still in a rebuild, but if he goes out and gets the right pieces in the draft, New England could be back to their old ways, which is terrifying for the league. But, I'm happy for Vrabel. I'm happy for the Patriots fans. Football is just not football with the Patriots being so bad. So definitely exciting things over there in New England.
Yeah, I completely saw Vrabel going to New England. Yeah. I mean, it was obvious. Like you said, he's played there before, been around the franchise for many, many years. He's just such a likable guy. I mean, like you said, he milked everything out of those players in Tennessee. They went to an AFC Championship game. They were one game away from going to the Super Bowl, and Ryan Tannehill was his quarterback. Now, Drake May, I think, is a future elite quarterback. He's got some really good intangibles. He's really good scrambler, really good throw power. But it's important for them to hire Vrabel simply for the culture. I mean, this New England Patriots culture has been just a joke since Brady and Belichick have parted ways. But yeah, really exciting stuff for Vrabel and the New England franchise. And like you said, it's really not football without the Patriots being in the mix. I don't expect them to be, any good within these next 2 years. Like you said, rebuilding phase, really young players, not a very good roster all around. But, who knows? Vrabel could go in there, change the culture from day one, and milk everything out of these players, and they could possibly have, an 8-win season, 9-win season. I don't see them making it to the playoffs because that roster is just so bad. But definitely a really good move for the Patriots, getting a culture changer in Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, I agree. Very last hire that we're going to hit on. This is the last one. The only head coaching job available, I believe, is the Saints.
Yeah.
Am I correct on that? So we'll cover that on next week's show if news is announced. But the last one, which is another hire that I actually really like, Aaron Glenn leaving the Lions as their defensive coordinator to go over to the New York Jets to be their head coach. Now, the Jets, they suck. They're one of the bottom tier franchises in the league historically. So it's going to take a big turnaround. But the Jets have some pieces, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you got some studs on defense. You got some studs on offense. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is going to be gone. Probably maybe draft a quarterback, probably more free agency or something like that, a quarterback. But I mean, definitely going to be some rebuilding to do there. But I like Aaron Glenn. I think the players that play for him really like him. I think he's a leader, and I think he's a very, very good defensive-minded coach. Because I mean, you saw for the majority of the season what he got out of his players in Detroit.
Yeah, with practice squad players.
When their whole defense went down, they ended up making it to the second round of the playoffs, and getting a first-round bye. So good for them. Good for the Jets. I'm pulling for them. Hopefully they can get things turned around, but it's just going to be kind of one. It's probably one of the more ones that I'm uncertain on.
Yeah.
Like there's some, like Schottenheimer, where I'm like, that's going to fail, and then there's some like Vrabel, where I really think it'll succeed. I think Glenn can kind of go both ways. Kind of almost the same as Ben Johnson. It's going to be a boom or a bust.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's kind of in the gray area in between. You don't really know what to make out of the hire yet. But I will say this, it is a really good hire. Former Jets player, kind of the same situation as Vrabel, so to speak. Former defensive player, defensive-minded guy, kind of a tough guy persona that when he walks in the building, you just get that vibe off of him. And he was a really good player. He's a really good defensive coordinator, like you said. With what he was doing with the talent in Detroit late in the season was pretty remarkable and outstanding, because that defense was rolling out players. I mean, they were picking people off the street to play. Jamal Adams was playing. So
for a little bit.
Really good hire. I don't think they messed up one bit on this hire, but it's the Jets. So I really don't know what's
he's probably going to suck.
Yeah, it's definitely not an opportunity that has a high chance to succeed in. I really would like to see him succeed and the Jets actually be, good for once. I mean, our whole lives they've been terrible. Really they've made it to the AFC Championship in, I believe, 2010, and that was the last time they have been in the playoffs. They have the longest drought in, I think, sports. In every sport,
probably one of them.
This will be 14 straight years without a playoff appearance, and they don't really have a quarterback. Their roster is pretty decent, but really good hire. I'm excited to see what he can do if he can change the culture in New York. It's going to be really, really hard, especially with how the media is. It's going to be important for him to kind of put on the earmuffs and just nose to the grindstone for this team, because they're going to need everything out of him in order to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that pretty much wraps it up for the show today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. This is the first time, so bear with us with that as well. We're trying to continue to improve, and any suggestions, you guys shoot us a text on Instagram or wherever. Just let us know. We're here to try to entertain and just talk sports and have fun.
Yeah, that's going to go and wrap it up for this episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to go follow us on our socials at Blitz Bird Podcast.